I remember the day I left for deployment as if it were yesterday. It was a bright sunny morning and the world felt full of promise. My wife, Jessica, stood on the tarmac, waving with a smile that I thought was genuine. Little did I know, as the plane took off and I settled into the rhythm of military life, that her smile was just a mask for what she was hiding behind it. Jessica and I had been married for 5 years. We met in college, and our relationship blossomed into a commitment that I believed was unbreakable. She was witty, charming, and had this infectious laugh that could brighten my darkest days. The distance of deployment was tough, but I thought our bond was strong enough to withstand it. I kept busy with training and missions, often reaching out to her through video calls and messages. Initially, she matched my enthusiasm, sending me updates about her life and our home. But as weeks turned into months, I began to sense a change. It started subtly. Jessica's texts became less frequent, her replies shorter. The playful banter that once filled our conversations dulled into mundane updates about her day. I chalked it up to her being busy, maybe with work or friends. After all, she was living life while I was away serving my country. But deep down, a nagging feeling unsettled me. It was the kind of feeling that you can't shake off, even when everything seems fine on the surface. The real turning point came one evening when I found myself scrolling through social media. I stumbled upon an old friend from back home who had posted a picture of a party she attended. In the background, I saw Jessica. She was laughing, a drink in her hand, and surrounded by unfamiliar faces. At first, I felt a mix of relief and curiosity. She seemed happy, but then I noticed something, a guy leaning in too close, whispering in her ear. I squinted at the screen, my heart racing. It was just a picture, I told myself. But the knot in my stomach twisted tighter. As the days passed, my unease grew. I decided to confront it. I contacted a mutual friend, Sarah, who lived nearby. I casually asked about Jessica, trying to gauge if something was amiss. Sarah hesitated before finally admitting she had seen Jessica with another guy a few times. My heart sank as she described the flirty behavior, hugs that lingered too long, laughter that echoed too loudly. I felt my world tilting, the ground beneath me shifting. One night, after a particularly grueling day, I received a phone call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was a guy who introduced himself as Mike. He claimed to be Jessica's friend and that she had been spending a lot of time with him. My gut reaction was disbelief. Surely it was a misunderstanding. But as he continued to talk, my heart pounded in my chest. The way he spoke about her made it clear there was more to their relationship than he let on. The next day, I couldn't bear it any longer. I needed to confront Jessica. I arranged a video call, my hands shaking as I prepared to face the truth. When I saw her face on the screen, I forced myself to smile. But inside, I was a storm of emotions. I started with casual questions, testing the waters, trying to gauge her honesty. But as she spoke, I could see the cracks in her facade. "Everything's great here. Just busy with work and spending time with friends," she said, her voice smooth but her eyes darting around the screen. Despite the red flags, I pretended to buy it for a moment. Then I asked directly, "Have you been seeing anyone while I'm away?" Her reaction said it all. The slight hitch in her breath, the way she froze, those were signs of guilt. She began to stutter, concocting excuses that fell flat. "Oh, it's nothing serious, just some friends from the office, you know how it is." I pressed her harder, and when I mentioned the call from Mike, the color drained from her face. She started to make excuses, claiming he was just a friend and that I was overreacting. But I could see her lying through her teeth. Her defensiveness only fueled my anger. My heart raced as I confronted her about the pictures and the rumors. Each denial felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I needed answers, but all I received were half-truths and a lot of empty promises. The confrontation spiraled into a shouting match, with Jessica throwing insults and accusations my way. She called me paranoid and controlling, claiming I was imagining things. The emotional weight of her betrayal crashed down on me like a tidal wave, leaving me gasping for air. I hung up the call, my heart heavy with disbelief and anger. How could she do this to me? I felt trapped between sadness and rage, and I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit back and let this betrayal fester. As I sat in my barracks, tears stinging my eyes, I realized I was going to need a plan. I couldn't confront her like this without evidence. She was already good at lying to my face. I needed to gather information, to understand the full extent of her betrayal before I made any decisions. The betrayal burned like acid in my chest, and I could already feel the contours of revenge forming in my mind. It was a matter of time before I executed my plan. I couldn't let her think she could get away with this. The next few days were a blur of anger and pain. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Jessica with that guy, the way they laughed, the intimacy. That should have been reserved for me. I felt like a fool and I hated myself for not seeing the signs sooner. It was time to turn this feeling into something productive. I started mapping out my plan for revenge, a way to make her realize the gravity of her actions. I began by reaching out to Sarah again, my mutual friend who had initially dropped the hints. I needed to know everything, who this Mike was, how close they really were, and any other details she could offer. Sarah agreed to meet me for coffee, and I could sense her hesitance when I brought up the affair. It was hard for her, knowing that she was going to be the bearer of bad news, but she eventually opened up. "Look," she said, her voice low, "I don't want to get involved, but I've seen them together a few times at bars downtown. They've been pretty flirty, and I think they've crossed some lines. I didn't want to say anything before, but it's not just innocent hanging out." I felt my heart drop at her words. My suspicions were confirmed, and the betrayal felt like a punch to the gut. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, then replied, "A couple of months, maybe. I wish I could have said something sooner." Months. I'd been pouring my heart out to Jessica, thinking she was alone while I was thousands of miles away, and she was sharing moments with another man. The anger bubbled inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. As I mulled over Sarah's revelations, I realized I needed more concrete evidence. Something undeniable that would shatter Jessica's web of lies once and for all. I started to gather information about Mike, looking for social media profiles, tracking any posts or photos they might have together. It was like becoming a detective in my own life, and I was surprisingly good at it. One evening, I came across a post from his profile. He had tagged Jessica in a photo at a party, arms around each other, both grinning like they were in on some inside joke. My stomach twisted as I stared at the image, my mind racing with thoughts of how easily she had traded my loyalty for his attention. That night, I sat down to write everything out, the evidence, my feelings, the timeline of events. I wanted to be prepared for when the moment came to confront Jessica again. Each word felt cathartic, helping me to channel my anger into something that felt manageable. I was no longer the passive husband. I was going to take control of my narrative. The following week was a blur. I kept myself busy with work, but I had my eyes on Jessica. I started to notice the little things, the way she would go out more often, the subtle changes in her schedule, the late nights with excuses that felt flimsy. Each time I caught her in a lie, my resolve hardened. She thought I was the oblivious husband who wouldn't suspect a thing, but I was anything but that. Then came the day when I decided to execute the second part of my plan. I contacted a private investigator. I had never considered that I would need one, but desperation drove me. I wanted hard evidence. He was efficient and discreet, and I quickly found myself sharing the details of my situation. "Don't worry," he assured me. "I'll find out everything you need to know, just give me a few days." While waiting for the investigator's findings, I turned my attention to how I would confront Jessica. I needed to make sure she couldn't twist the narrative to her advantage. I wanted her to look me in the eye and admit the truth I already knew but needed her to say. After a week of anxious waiting, the investigator called me with the news. He had compiled a dossier of evidence, complete with photos of Jessica and Mike together, eating dinner, laughing, and even looking cozy at a bar. The images were painfully vivid, each one further confirming my worst fears. I felt both vindicated and devastated. This wasn't just a small slip, it was a full-blown affair. My heart was heavy with the burden of it all, but at least I had what I needed to confront her, to expose her lies. I called Jessica for another video chat, trying to keep my composure. When she answered, she seemed relaxed, maybe even a bit smug. "Hey there, missed you," she said, but I could hear the hint of nervousness in her tone. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "What's up? You sound serious," she replied, tilting her head slightly. "I know about Mike," I stated plainly. Her smile faltered, and for a moment I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice turning defensive. "I have evidence of your affair," I continued, holding my ground. "You're a liar, Jess, and it's time you come clean." She opened her mouth to protest but quickly gathered herself. "You've got it all wrong. He's just a friend, I swear. You're being paranoid." I cut her off, my voice rising. "Don't you dare play the victim. I have pictures, Jess. You can't deny it anymore." The silence that followed was suffocating. I watched her face fall, the color draining from her cheeks. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when she would finally have to face the consequences of her actions. I could feel the weight of the impending confrontation hanging in the air. And as I prepared to unleash the full brunt of my fury mixed with heartbreak, I realized I was no longer just a soldier. I was a man on a mission for justice. Jessica's expression twisted as the reality of my words sunk in. I could see her mind racing, desperately searching for a way to wiggle out of the corner she had backed herself into. "You can't just accuse me like that. Where's your proof?" She shot back, her voice trembling slightly. I leaned back in my chair, a cold calm replacing the initial fire in my gut. "Oh, I have proof. The pictures, Jess, the dates and places. You can't spin your way out of this one." I could almost see the gears turning in her head, trying to formulate some sort of excuse, some half-baked story that would salvage her dignity. She took a deep breath, trying to mask the panic creeping into her eyes. "You're being ridiculous. I'm allowed to have friends. You're just mad because you're away and can't handle it." I shook my head, the anger bubbling back to the surface. "This isn't about being away, Jessica. It's about trust. You shattered that when you decided to betray me. You were supposed to be my partner, my confidant, not someone who runs off to another man while I'm fighting for our country." Her facade crumbled a bit more, and for a fleeting moment I saw genuine fear in her eyes, a fleeting glimpse of the woman I once loved. "Please just listen to me," she implored, her voice softer now. "It's not what you think. I was lonely, and Mike, he just understood me better." Loneliness. The word struck a nerve. I felt my heart harden further. "So instead of talking to your husband, you decided to find comfort in someone else's arms. That's your excuse." Jessica's eyes darted away, shame finally creeping in. "You don't know what it's like. You're gone for months at a time, and I'm left here with no support. I needed someone to talk to." My heart ached at her words, but it only fueled my anger. "You had me. You had every opportunity to reach out, but instead you chose to cheat. You completely undermined our marriage, Jess." She opened her mouth to argue, but I could see she was losing the battle. The tears started falling, and part of me felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered the pictures, the lies, the betrayal, and the sympathy vanished. "Save your tears," I said coldly. "You made your choice. You decided to betray me while I was serving my country. You didn't care about the commitment we made." I pulled out the dossier the investigator had prepared, feeling almost a sense of satisfaction as I revealed the photographs. "Look at this. You can't deny what you've done." As I scrolled through the images, I could feel the tension thickening in the air. Each picture was a dagger, each moment captured a testament to her infidelity. I laid them out one by one, watching her reaction closely. The first photo showed them laughing together at a bar, the second a picture of them close, too close for comfort. "I can't believe this," she whispered, staring at the screen in disbelief. "You had someone spy on me." "It's not spying if you're the one who gave me reason to doubt you," I shot back, feeling a surge of vindication. Jessica finally broke down, her defenses crumbling. I made a mistake. It was a moment of weakness, I swear. Just a moment of weakness?" I challenged. "This wasn't just a one-time thing. You've been lying to me for months while I was fighting for us, thinking you were home waiting for me." "I didn't think you would find out," she exclaimed, the desperation in her voice palpable. "I thought I could handle it, that you'd be gone for so long." "Handle it? You didn't handle anything. You chose the easy way out instead of facing the loneliness. You thought you could have your cake and eat it too. As she sobbed, I felt a mix of anger and pity. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to remind her of all the good times we shared, but I couldn't. The betrayal had seeped too deep. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice low but firm. "No, I don't love him," she replied, her eyes wide with panic. "It was just physical, it meant nothing." "Yet it was enough for you to risk everything we built together," I said, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. "You made your choice, Jess. And now I have to make mine." Her eyes widened, realization dawning on her as she understood what I was implying. "You can't just throw everything away, can't I?" I replied, the pain in my chest twisting into resolve. "You've shown me that our marriage means nothing to you. If I'm not worth being faithful to, then I don't want to be in a relationship where I'm not valued." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's tears streamed down her cheeks, but I felt my heart harden even more. I had been devastated, but now I was ready to take control of my life. "I'm not asking for an immediate divorce or anything," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "But I need time to think, to process this." She nodded, the fight gone from her. "I understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. I ended the call, my heart heavy with what had just transpired. The confrontation had been exhausting, and now I had to sift through the wreckage of my marriage. I knew I had to figure out my next steps wisely. This was just the beginning of a long journey, and I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I was determined to take back my power, to not let her betrayal define me. I needed to focus on myself, on healing, and on making decisions that would lead me toward a future where I could find happiness again, even if that meant moving on without her. My heart was shattered, but it was time to start rebuilding. In the following days, the aftermath of my confrontation with Jessica lingered like a dark cloud hanging over my head. I felt a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't go away, a constant reminder of the betrayal I was grappling with. I spent long hours at work, trying to distract myself from my thoughts, but every quiet moment brought me back to the reality of what had happened. It was difficult to navigate the feelings of betrayal and anger, but I made the conscious decision not to reach out to Jessica again. I needed space to think, to process everything I had learned. I didn't want to fall into the trap of her emotional manipulation again. It was time for me to focus on myself, to figure out what I truly wanted moving forward. I began filling my days with activities that brought me joy, even if they were small. I started jogging in the mornings, an exercise that allowed me to clear my mind and channel my frustrations into something productive. I joined a local gym, hoping to find a community that would distract me from the chaos of my personal life. I connected with friends, old and new, sharing laughter and engaging in conversations that had nothing to do with my crumbling marriage. Despite my efforts, the thoughts of Jessica and her affair still crept in. I would hear a couple laughing or see a loving couple holding hands, and my heart would sink. I had devoted myself to her, and the notion that she had shared that devotion with another man gnawed at me like an insatiable beast. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I decided to sit down and reflect. I pulled out my journal, something I hadn't used in a while, and began to write. I poured my thoughts onto the pages, from my anger and sadness to my fears and hopes. Writing became an outlet for me, a way to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling in my mind. As I wrote, I began to realize something vital. I was not defined by her actions. I was more than just the wronged husband. I was a person with dreams, hopes, and aspirations. I had goals I wanted to pursue, and I couldn't let this betrayal derail me from those. I needed to reclaim my identity and build a future where I could thrive, whether that included Jessica or not. Around the same time, I finally decided to consult a therapist. I had resisted the idea for a while, thinking I could handle everything on my own. But I knew I needed guidance to navigate the emotional turmoil I was experiencing. The therapist helped me unpack my feelings, and with each session I felt lighter. I began to understand that it was normal to feel betrayed and confused, and that healing was a process I had to allow myself to embrace. During one session, I voiced my concerns about how I should handle things with Jessica. "I feel like I owe it to myself to confront her again," I said, my voice wavering. But I'm scared. What if I still have feelings for her? What if I can't let go? The therapist nodded thoughtfully. It's important to acknowledge those feelings, but it's equally important to prioritize your well-being. If you choose to confront her again, do it on your terms. It's about finding closure, whether that means working things out or moving on. That advice resonated with me. Closure. It was something I desperately needed, whether with Jessica or through letting her go. I decided I would reach out to her again, but this time it would be on my terms, not hers. I would demand clarity and honesty, and I wouldn't allow her to manipulate my emotions any longer. I drafted a text to Jessica, something simple yet firm. We need to talk again. I'm ready to discuss our situation and what happens next. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. When she responded, I felt my heart race. Okay, I'm free this weekend. Can we meet at the coffee shop? I agreed, knowing this conversation would be pivotal. The anticipation built up within me, each hour dragging on as I prepared for what was bound to be a difficult discussion. Saturday arrived, and I found myself sitting at a small table in the coffee shop, a knot forming in my stomach. I sipped my coffee, trying to calm my nerves, but the weight of the impending conversation pressed heavily on my chest. When Jessica arrived, she seemed tentative, her eyes darting around as if she were searching for the right words. I had to remind myself that this was a conversation I needed to have. I deserved to be heard. "Hey," she said softly, taking a seat across from me. "Thanks for agreeing to meet." I nodded, searching her face for any hint of sincerity. "Let's cut to the chase. We both know why we're here." Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly squashed it down. "I want to know what you want, Jessica," I said firmly. "Do you want to save our marriage, or is it too late for that?" She took a deep breath, clearly struggling with her emotions. I realize how much I messed up. I didn't think about the consequences. I just got caught up in the moment." "Caught up in the moment? You made a choice, Jess. You chose him over me." My voice was steady, but the words felt heavy as they hung in the air between us. "I know," she admitted, her voice trembling, "and I regret it every day. I never meant to hurt you. Regret doesn't change the fact that you did hurt me. I need to understand why you thought it was okay to seek comfort in someone else instead of talking to me." She looked down, her hands fidgeting with her coffee cup. "I was lonely. I thought you wouldn't understand, but I see now that I made a terrible mistake." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "You left me no choice but to question everything. Do you understand that?" "Yes, and I want to make it right. I want to work on us." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. But then I reminded myself of the evidence I had, the pain I had endured. "How can I trust you again? How do you expect me to believe you won't do this again?" "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice firm but sincere. "I promise I love you." Love. The word felt foreign now. I had once believed in it so deeply, but her betrayal had tainted that belief. "Love isn't enough, Jess. I need actions, not just words." As we continued to talk, I realized that this conversation was about more than just the affair. It was about rebuilding trust, about understanding whether we could create a future together. But as I weighed my options, I couldn't shake the feeling that even if we tried to patch things up, it wouldn't be the same. At the end of our conversation, I made no promises. I had learned that love and forgiveness were complex, and I wasn't ready to commit to anything. But I did know one thing: I would prioritize my well-being above all else, whether that meant working on our marriage or stepping away from it altogether. As I left the coffee shop, a sense of clarity washed over me. I was ready to take the next step, whatever that might look like. I had come to understand that healing takes time, and whether I chose to forgive Jessica or not, I would emerge stronger. I was ready for whatever came next. In the weeks that followed my conversation with Jessica, life took on a new rhythm. I had made no promises to her, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was focused on myself and my healing, allowing the roller coaster of emotions to settle into something more manageable. Each day was a new opportunity to reclaim my identity, to rediscover who I was outside of the context of my marriage. I continued seeing my therapist regularly, and each session offered me valuable insights. I learned to acknowledge my feelings without judgment and to appreciate the journey I was on. The pain was still there, but it was transforming, evolving from a gnawing ache into a catalyst for growth. I spent more time with friends, doing activities I enjoyed. I picked up some hobbies that I had neglected during my marriage, like painting and hiking. With each stroke of the brush or each breath of fresh air, I felt lighter. I was slowly peeling back the layers of hurt, and it felt liberating. But Jessica was still in the background of my mind. She reached out occasionally, sending texts that were a mix of apologies and reminders of our shared memories. I found it difficult to respond, torn between the love I once felt for her and the betrayal that had shattered my trust. One particularly hard day, I received a text from Jessica that read, "I miss you. Can we talk again? I think I've figured out what went wrong." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. Did she really think a few weeks of reflection could erase the damage she had done? I responded simply, "I need more time." The truth was, I wasn't sure if I wanted to give her another chance. As much as I had loved her, I was learning to love myself again, and I wasn't sure I wanted to jeopardize that. As summer approached, I took a trip to visit my family. Being away from the reminders of my past life helped me gain perspective. My parents welcomed me with open arms, sensing my turmoil but respecting my space. I shared bits and pieces of what had happened, focusing on my journey toward healing rather than the specifics of Jessica's betrayal. They supported me, reminding me that I deserved happiness, no matter what that looked like. One evening around the dinner table, my dad offered some sage advice. "You know, son, sometimes relationships are like a house that's been burned down. You can either try to rebuild it with the same materials, or you can start fresh with something new. Both options are valid, but you have to choose what's best for you." His words struck a chord with me. I realized that while I could choose to rebuild my relationship with Jessica, I could also choose to walk away entirely. The idea of starting fresh was appealing, but it required courage, a leap of faith toward an unknown future. When I returned home, I found myself at a crossroads. I had been avoiding Jessica's texts, but I knew I couldn't keep delaying the inevitable. I had to face her again, not only for her sake but for my own. It was time for clarity, time to express what I really felt. I arranged to meet her at the same coffee shop where we had had our last serious conversation. The familiar setting felt loaded with tension and memories, but I steeled myself for what was to come. When I walked in, Jessica was already seated, her hands nervously fiddling with her coffee cup. She looked up as I approached, and for a moment I saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I took a seat across from her, my heart pounding. "We need to talk about where we stand," I said firmly. "I know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last spoke. I realize how much I hurt you, and I've been working on myself too." "Have you?" I pressed, folding my arms. "What does that even mean for you?" "I've been seeing a therapist as well," she said, looking me directly in the eyes. I didn't want to admit I needed help, but I'm starting to understand my patterns, why I sought affirmation outside of our marriage. I don't want to be that person anymore. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard, but I was cautious. "Words are easy, Jess. I need to see real change," I said, my voice steady. "Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight." "I understand," she nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "I'm not asking for instant forgiveness. I just want the chance to show you that I can change." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her gaze. "What do you envision for us? Do you think we can have a healthy relationship again?" "I want to start fresh if you're willing," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I've made mistakes, but I believe we can heal together if you're open to it." I paused, weighing her words carefully. The thought of rekindling what we had felt both enticing and terrifying. I could still feel the remnants of love I had for her, but the wounds were deep. "I'm not sure, Jess. I need time to think about this. I can't just jump back in." "Please," she pleaded, "just consider it. I'm willing to work hard to earn your trust again." I nodded slowly, feeling the tension in the air. "I'll think about it, but I need you to understand I won't tolerate any more lies. If we're going to start over, it has to be built on honesty and transparency." "I promise," she said, her eyes earnest. As we continued to talk, I found myself feeling more at ease. I could see that she was genuinely remorseful, but I also knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to mend the fractures in our relationship. I felt a glimmer of hope, but I was still cautious. When we finally left the coffee shop, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. I felt a sense of possibility in the air, a promise of change. But I also knew that I had to protect my heart, to take things slowly. I was ready to explore the potential for healing, but I wasn't going to rush into anything without careful consideration. The decision of whether to rebuild or start fresh would ultimately rest with me, and I felt empowered to take my time. I stepped out into the world, hopeful yet grounded, ready to face whatever came next, together or apart. The journey to healing had only just begun, and I was determined to navigate it on my own terms. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself navigating a delicate balance between hope and caution. Jessica and I began to reconnect in small ways. We started texting more, frequently sharing bits of our lives, and even went out for dinner a few times. It was strange, almost like dating again, but the weight of the past loomed over us. I noticed changes in Jessica. She seemed more present, more engaged during our conversations. She was open about her therapy sessions, sharing insights she was gaining about herself and her choices. At first, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps we could rebuild what we had. But then the doubts crept in. Was this genuine change or just a temporary shift to win me back? Every time we met, I was keenly aware of the fine line between forgiveness and forgetting. I couldn't ignore the fact that while she was working on herself, I was also healing in my own way. I continued to focus on my personal growth, spending time with friends, pursuing hobbies, and diving deeper into my therapy sessions. I was becoming more attuned to what I wanted out of life, both as an individual and in a relationship. One evening, we agreed to meet at a park for a walk. The sun was starting to set, casting a golden hue across the sky. As we strolled, I felt a sense of serenity but also an undercurrent of anxiety. I didn't want to dismiss the progress we had made, but I needed to address the elephant in the room. "Jessica," I said, stopping to face her, "I really need to know if you're committed to this path of change. I can't go back to where we were before." She looked me in the eyes, her expression earnest. "I am committed. I can't change the past, but I'm willing to put in the work to show you that I can be a better partner. I don't want to lose you again." Her words resonated with me, yet doubt lingered. "It's going to take time for me to completely trust you again. Can you accept that?" "Absolutely. I know rebuilding trust is a process," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here for the long haul." In that moment, I felt a flicker of the love we once had, but I also recognized the importance of boundaries. "I need to focus on myself too, Jess. It's not just about us right now, it's about healing as individuals." "I understand," she nodded. "And I'll support you. Whatever you need, I'll be here." As we continued our walk, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. We discussed our hopes and dreams, our fears, and how we envisioned our future. It was refreshing and daunting all at once. We were two people who had faced a significant betrayal trying to rediscover each other, and I was beginning to believe that maybe we could find a way forward. But as time went on, I realized that the healing process wasn't linear. There were days of clarity and connection, followed by moments of doubt and fear. I still had flashbacks of the pain I had endured, and while I wanted to support Jessica's growth, I couldn't ignore my own emotional needs. Eventually, I made the decision to set some boundaries. I told Jessica that I needed us to take things slow. We could continue to date, but I needed space to evaluate my feelings and our relationship before making any commitments. She agreed, appreciating my honesty and the importance of allowing ourselves to grow. As summer turned into fall, we found ourselves enjoying each other's company in a new light. We attended events, shared laughter, and supported each other during tough days. I saw glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, the one who could brighten my day with a smile. But I also maintained my independence, ensuring that I didn't lose myself in the process. One evening, as we sat under a blanket watching the stars, I turned to her and said, "I think we're on the right path. It won't be easy, but I see potential." "I do too," she replied, her eyes sparkling. "I'm grateful for the chance to start again." Those words felt like a promise, a commitment to work on our relationship together. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I felt more prepared than before. I had learned to prioritize my own well-being, and I was ready to navigate this new chapter. In the months that followed, we continued to grow, both individually and as a couple. Jessica remained committed to her therapy, and I continued to invest in my own healing journey. We worked on communication, addressing issues openly rather than letting them fester. And while the scars of betrayal would always be there, they became part of our story, a story of resilience, growth. Ultimately, I realized that healing is not about forgetting the past. It's about learning from it and using that knowledge to build a better future. Whether that future included Jessica or not, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. In the end, while the journey was filled with heartache and uncertainty, it taught me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of self-care. I still had a long road ahead, but I was determined to walk that path with open eyes and an open heart. I had come to understand that no matter what, I would emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to face life's challenges with or without her.